You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We were talking in the last segment about the congressional hearings on Friday on Ebola. They were asking about the deployment of U.S. troops in order to, quote-unquote, fight Ebola in Liberia. And we had some interesting admissions come out of this in terms of what they're doing or have not done to look after the health of the soldiers who are going over there. We learned that they only have one plane that can bring someone back who is symptomatic. In other words, keep them in isolation. That plane can only carry one person at a time and can only make 4 trips per week. So they can bring a total of 4 people back per week that are symptomatic from this area. And that's it, out of 5,000 troops that they're sending over there. And then we learned this from the Major General. I want to play this full clip. We didn't have time for it in the last segment just before the top of the hour. Let's go back to that clip and play this. He has amazing admission about how they look at Liberia.
So, General, why do we only hold our troops for 10 days before we release them to bring them back to the United States?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question, and I can understand the confusion on this, but let me see if I can make it clear. To start, the 21-day period for monitoring has to take place outside the infection zone. For us, that'll be in the United States. Out of an abundance of caution, prior to departure, in order to reduce their risk, commanders will be allowed to remove their personnel from whatever jobs they were doing for up to 10 days prior to departure from Liberia in case, to limit their exposure and provide an extra layer.
He's struggling to explain why they're only going to keep them for 10 out of the 21 days they need to be isolated.
I'm going to need further explanation of this because I don't understand the 10 days when the science says the 21 days. But
the 21 days takes place, the 21-day monitoring for U.S. military personnel will take place stateside after they've left in order to ensure that they are Ebola-free, just as was described previously for other healthcare workers.
Why can't you quarantine in the country of infection, particularly if we're sending over military that could build a quarantine unit?
Ma'am, I'll defer to the doctors.
Here we go.
Listen to this. Disease personnel tell us in order to be absolutely certain that everybody is Ebola-free, it has to be outside the infection zone, and for all intents and purposes, the entire country of Liberia is an infection zone.
There we go. For all intents and purposes, the entire country of Liberia is an infection zone. Remember when we were told last week that they were only going to give limited protective equipment to the soldiers who were going over there? They only gave them 4 hours of training. They only needed limited protection equipment like gloves and a mask, not a suit, because they were not going to be exposed to Ebola. Yet, for purposes of quarantine, they believe that the entire country is an infection zone. Now, I find it interesting, as the Congress lady there was pointing out, I think it was Maloney from New York, she was a Democrat. That was both Democrats and Republicans asking these hard questions. Why, if we're being told by the CDC that it is 21 days, would you only hold them for 10? And let's understand, too, the science of this. That doesn't mean that people are 100% safe after 21 days. It means that there's a 95% chance that you're not going to get it transmitted after that. If you go all the way out to 42 days and it goes down to 98%, it's still not 100%. So let's understand that these are measures of risks. They're not absolute, it's safe or it's not safe. It's not a binary function here. It is how much of a risk are we willing to live with. They're willing to take a 5% chance that this is going to spread, but they're not even doing that. They're bringing people back. They're going to bring people back, put all of these military personnel, after quarantining them for 10 days, they're going to bring them back in a small plane together after 10 days. And we've seen that after about 10 to 14 days, that's when people who have been exposed to it typically come down with it. So that process of not holding them in country for quarantine, but putting them on a plane for 30 some odd hours and shipping them back stateside, that is even more dangerous. But they were telling us it wasn't a problem because they were going to be isolated. Yet now we learned that they consider the entire country to be an infection zone. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with a couple of your calls and with a local candidate who's going to talk about politics being local in your area as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Using unparalleled research in the development of a synergistic formulation based around the key concepts of super oxygenation, the next level in cleansing is here. With key ingredients backed by real clinical studies, the new Oxy powder, available through InfoWars Life, was invented during Dr. Group's research on the toxification of our bodies. Many herbal colon cleansers are harsh on the body and contain cheap and potentially dangerous ingredients, oftentimes full of synthetic fillers, GMOs, additives, or worse. Gently start cleaning your body with easy capsules that start working while you sleep. Oxy powder does not require time off work, and there's no need for bad tasting concoctions. Instead, Oxy powder slowly releases monoatomic oxygen into the intestinal tract and body. Experience the astonishing cleansing power of superoxide and ozonide technology. Go to InfoWarsLife.com or InfoWarsStore.com to get started with Oxy powder, or call 1-888-253-3139.
When you grab it, that's when you bang. Good for you.
KLN, Los Angeles. Clone Radio. We play the songs that sound more like everyone else than anyone else. Clone.
Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. The Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man.
The answer to 1984 is 1776. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We were just talking about congressional testimony on Friday, where we saw a major general as well as some civilians. There was only one doctor on the panel that could be asked questions by the congressional committee. We don't seem to be interested in having doctors in charge of this, but they were primarily focused on the risks to the soldiers, what was being done to protect them, and really what was the mission. Now, what we learned, not too many people have talked about this. We had a story on Friday on Infowars.com that they only have one plane that can take one person that is symptomatic at a time, and that plane can make 4 journeys a week. So they can get 4 people, 4 soldiers out of the 5,000 that they're sending over there back per week. Now, we've been told, don't worry, they're not going to be in contact with anybody. Yet we also learned that they're going to be bringing in 500 medical workers per week from the African countries there that are on the front lines of the Ebola outbreak. They're going to be bringing them in to train them. We also learned in this last clip that we played in the last section, the Major General said that they are only going to hold the soldiers in quarantine in that country for 10 days. And the Congress people were amazed at that. Why not the 21 days? We keep hearing that you're going to quarantine people for 21 days. So he says, well, we'll do some quarantine with them back stateside, but we can't do the full quarantine in country because for all practical purposes, Liberia, the entire country, is an infection zone. There you go. So the entire country is an infection zone, yet they're sending the soldiers over there, soldiers who, in many cases, are not specialists in medicine. We're sending the 101st Airborne Division over there. As Dr. Francis Boyle, who is an expert on bioterrorism, pointed out, and he also knows a lot about what the CIA and other agencies have been doing with bioweapons, he pointed out these are not the divisions that we see as medical divisions or building divisions. There are a lot of elite fighting units that are going over there. For what purpose? Well, we know that the Bilderberg Group in 2013 pointed out that Africa was one of their areas of special interest. We know that AFRICOM was created back in 2007, fairly recently. Are they looking to get at natural resources in Africa? Are they looking to get a pandemic going across the world so they can sell us vaccines? It's been reported by the WHO. We have this up on Infowars.com today that the Ebola cases have now gone past 10,000 worldwide. This is from the WHO, the World Health Organization. Now, to put that in perspective, that is more than 4 times the number of all the previous Ebola outbreaks. There's been about 32 of them. All of them combined in total are less than 2,500. So this is more than 4 times that already. We were told at the beginning of the outbreak that it was a different strain of Ebola. That's something that hasn't been talked about a great deal. And so we keep hearing the same pronouncements that this is, we understand the science, we know everything about this, you just need to trust us, we know how this is spread, and yet this is still accelerating. It is still, now it has crossed the 10,000 mark. We have up on Infowars.com a quote from the Army Times from Patricia Keim. It says, viruses like Ebola have been of interest to the Pentagon since the late 1970s, mainly because Ebola and its fellow viruses have high mortality rates, and its stable nature and aerosol make it attractive as a potential biological weapon. I want to take a couple of your calls before we go to a guest. We have a businessman, a gun shop owner, or someone who's going to talk to us about how the elites understand that all politics are local, but many of us who are concerned about liberty haven't gotten that message yet. Michael Cargill is going to be on with us later in the hour. Before we do, I want to take a few of your phone calls. Let's go to Mary in Wisconsin. Mary. Are you still there? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, David Knight. You and Alex Jones are doing a tremendous job with your team at InfoWars, getting the truth out about the acquired diseases that are actually created in labs. But the most important news that you can share, and I know Alex knows this, and I know you know this, is that Yahweh Jesus Christ is in Australia. Brian Leonard Golightly Marshall. His last site on YouTube is Sword of Truth 3168, and also on Google. God is in the world right now in Australia, and we all, as angels incarnate and angels in the heavenly realm, and the saints, work together to reveal the truth and to uncover the evil that's truly happening by the Satanists.
Well, I think that, yeah, I do believe that God is in the world right now. I don't think that he is incarnate, but that's an interesting idea. Thank you so much. You told us you're going to have something to talk about Ebola. Let's go to Andrew in Illinois. Andrew.
Yeah, great show, and I got my Ebola T-shirt, and I'll be taking a picture if there's still time for the contest. If not, I'm going to put it on YouTube or Facebook anyhow.
Yeah, I think the submissions have ended. I'm not sure. Guys, have the submissions ended for that contest? I know that the winner is going to be announced on Halloween, but they're going to look that up, and I'll let you know. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
Well, I just want to say that I'm quite worried about it getting cooler during the fall, and that Ebola will be airborne, you know.
Yes, that's something else that's come out, that it does have the capacity to go airborne. Another thing that came out during these congressional testimonies that I did not mention was the fact that they begrudgingly got the doctor to admit that, yes, Ebola can be spread by someone touching a surface and the virus staying on that surface and someone else touching that surface. As a matter of fact, Nancy Wright-Ball, the second person who came back, remember the first two that came back and went to Emory University, was Kent Bradley and Nancy Wright-Ball. She said she had no idea how she contracted it. She said there was no breach of her protective equipment, the same thing that the doctor who's currently getting treatment in New York said. She believed, however, that it might have been that a coworker who she did not have any direct physical contact with, she was sure about that, came down with Ebola, and she thought that she might have touched something that he touched. And so that is a very important part of the training that, of course, the U.S. military, I don't know if they're getting time for that or not. They're only getting 4 hours of training before they go over there. But the most important thing about your protective equipment is knowing how to take it off without contaminating yourself, because you can contaminate yourself with your own protective equipment. But there's also been the issue where Obama said that you couldn't get it on a bus. And then we had, at a press conference, someone asked the director of the CDC, Frieden, can you get it on a bus or not? And he gave us the answer. He said, well, you can't get it on a bus, but we don't want people who have Ebola riding on a bus because they can give it. You understand that? So you can't get it on a bus, according to Frieden, but, don't get on a bus because you could give it to somebody else. Well, they were able on Friday to get an admission from the people there that begrudgingly that, yes, in fact, you could transmit it independently. Let's go to Chris in Indiana. Chris.
Hi, David.
Hey, how you doing?